Let's fight. Welcome in the ring, folks. A good evening to each and every one of you. Whether you're joining us on Facebook, you're joining us on YouTube, you're joining us on Twitter. Welcome in the ring, folks. Let's fight. A lot to discuss this evening. And as you know, as we come in, we want to pay the price of admission is to share the live stream wherever you're picking us from. Retweet, subscribe, share on Facebook. We have a very special guest, as a matter of fact, two very special guests in the ring this evening, and we aren't going to waste much time. So again, I'm encouraging you guys to share the live stream very quickly. I'm going to do the same a couple places, and we come back and we bring back our very first guest. I have with me this evening Rickford Burke, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only. So I want us to get ready for what Rickford is going to contribute to the program this evening. Share the live stream, and I'm doing that very, very quickly. We are going to suspend our hot topics for this evening to delve right into the many issues that we are contending with. But some folks aren't waiting on me to share at all. They jump ahead. That's what I love to see. That is what I love to see. All right, I need to share a couple other places, and then, folks, we are good to go. We are good to go, and we know how we do it here. We ain't even waiting for magic number to be reached this evening. We're sharing and we starting the conversation. All right. Good to see so many of you. Let us know where you guys are joining the live stream from as well. That will be tremendously useful to us, so that when we're doing our shout outs, that all of you guys are mentioned and we pick up some of the names and the places that you guys are joining us from. Share the live stream. And I'm going to be doing the same thing from my end, folks, ensuring that I'm sharing the live stream as well. And we are almost ready to go. A couple other places we need to touch, and then we're good to go, guys. You know how we do it. Almost ready to go. Almost ready. All right. I think I'm where I need to be. We are where we need to be. And folks, as I said, we're not going to wait very long this evening. I am very, very privileged to have with me in the ring tonight the one and only Rickford Burke. And you guys know him. I know him as Rickford Burke. You guys know him as president of the Caribbean Guyana Institute of Democracy, the CGID, and host of the fantastic popular show Conversations with Rickford. Rickford, a very good evening, sir. Welcome in the ring.
Thanks for your kind words. I hardly knew myself from that introduction. Thank you.
and believe it or not, I got like a whole page left here, you know. But in terms of brevity, Rickford, I wanted to have your thinking on this international issue of the George Floyd case and the Devic, I think the surname is pronounced Chauvin, that verdict that came out today, because as we know, Rickford, and you know more acutely than even us here, how this case has captivated the world. Talk to us, Rickford.
Well, as you know, I helped to lead the fight for justice for George Floyd here in New York. CGID held in conjunction with some of the other Caribbean leaders. We held in the middle of the pandemic a protest calling for justice for George Floyd. A 50,000-man protest. Our members of Congress and our elected officials attended. So I was happy to lead that fight. Today's verdict of guilty on third degree, second degree, third degree murder, as well as manslaughter. It sends a strong signal that America is on its way to police accountability and a reckoning for racist police officers who have been killing Black people for decades and get away with it. As you know, juries, especially white juries, hardly convict police officers when they kill unarmed Black people. And we have been fighting for change. As George Floyd's daughter said, his little 3-year-old, 4-year-old daughter said, "Daddy changed the world." It indeed changed at least the United States. And as a result of the protest that these young people fought for, we've had changes all across America in the way policing is conducted, in the way police officers are held to account. Um, in New York, we had some bills, 30 bills, held up in the state legislature for years that passed within 2 weeks. Those pieces of legislation were enacted, and then we had the same thing in many states across the country. Um, Also pending in Congress now, and we expect the Republicans to filibuster it, is the Justice in George Floyd Act, which lays out federal reforms and mandates for police accountability. So I think the verdict today is, while it's some level of justice, it wouldn't bring back George Floyd, it wouldn't end the pain the family feels, but at least it demonstrates that members of our community have come to terms with the reality of life, that Black men in this country have been targeted, have been mistreated, have been killed by police officers for far too long without accountability. Today, accountability begins.
Fantastic, Rickford. Rickford, what is this message? We know that there's a large theme of Black Lives Matter, but in lots of countries like our own, there is a system that has its knee on our neck. What is the message we take from George Floyd's life and death?
The message is there must be accountability and there must be justice, equal justice under law. From time immemorial, Black people have been mistreated in this country. There's been no equity for Black people. There have not been equal justice. There have not been equality of opportunity for Black people. And it came out of the system of slavery. It came out of a system of Jim Crow. It came out of a system where white people that controlled society saw Black people as less human beings. You would not believe that the American Constitution once said that Black people constitute 1/5 of a person, right? So
Yeah.
we're coming out of a system in the West, in Europe, where Black people were not seen as human beings. And so, concomitant with those inhumane pieces of legislation that dehumanized Black people was bad treatment. We weren't given the same rights as others. We weren't given the same opportunities for education, for economic development, for job prosperity, and so on. And throughout the decades, these disadvantages have stacked up against us. And so America is at the place now when white people are coming to terms, the system, institutions are coming to terms. They're clashing with this generation, new generation of young people who are standing on the shoulders of civil rights leaders, who are saying, those guys back then fought for it. We will make sure now that we get it. We want equal rights and justice. We want equality. And we want racial justice. And if you notice last year, they tore the country apart. And if you notice throughout the United States, earlier today, they were preparing for that again.
Oh, yes.
Luckily, we had the right verdict. Because these young people, and they're not the only Black people, all races are not going to stand for injustice and inequality and racism. And I hope that the people in Guyana, the young people in Guyana, who are facing the same problem, who are facing an apartheid PPP regime, who are facing a PPP regime that has their knees on their necks, a PPP regime that is racist, that is acting like they're from the Jim Crow era, they do not believe, the leaders of the PPP government do not believe that Black people are equal. They're trying to set up a system where Black people are second-class citizens. And I want to tell the people of Guyana tonight that they should be inspired by people, the young people of America, who stood up and said to institutions and said to racists throughout the society and said to politicians, it ends now. If we don't get racial justice, nobody in this society will prosper. And today we're beginning to have that reckoning, at least with regard to misconduct and racism by law enforcement.
Yep, yep, yep. And Rickford, this is a huge vindication for the work that you're doing on the ground there, bringing attention to issues like this, and also at home here, an advocate on so many issues. So I guess there's a great sense of jubilation, if not externally, at least in your heart.
Well, no, I'm not jubilant because the work goes on. The fight for justice goes on.
A lucha
We have to fight
continua.
for it continues. Breonna Taylor, Omar Arbery, these two young men that were just killed over the last month, one last week. Listen, we will end it. It must end. President Joe Biden just give a statement, made a speech to the nation, addressed the nation, and he said, racial injustice by police officers must end. And I'm happy that we have a government that will ensure that will be committed. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department of the United States will once more execute its mission, which is to protect the civil rights of Americans, regardless of our color, regardless of our social status. Justice must be pursued. And we know that it could be done. It's a shame that we have to pressure and march, and just like our foreparents did, but we'll have to do it. And at the end of the day, justice will prevail, or this society in this country would not prosper. And I want to send the same message to my friends and counterparts in Guyana. Justice, racial justice, social justice, and equality must prevail for Black people and Amerindians and East Indians and other races that don't support this PPP, or else no one in society must prosper.
Fantastic. Rickford, before I let you go, because I know you have a full evening ahead of you, you spoke there about governance and hoping that the Biden administration allows the civil rights arm unit department of the law enforcement agency there to do its work. And that seems to touch and concern some issues on the ground here. It seems as though when certain governments are in power, that all are created equal, but some more equal than others. Because under the Trump administration, we saw a litany of woes in the justice system. Quite like here, under the last administration, some things were unheard of, Rickford. And within 8-9 short months, my God, it's as though Pandora's box has opened.
Well, the PPP administration is akin to the Trump administration. They don't have respect for Black people. The fundamental philosophy of the PPP is ethnic supremacy for their supporters. They don't believe in equal justice. They don't believe in racial justice. They don't believe in equality. That's fundamentally fact. And I think as Guyanese, we have to come to this reality. The PPP is an autocratic party that whenever in government seeks to establish an ethnocracy that uses the resources of the state for the benefit only of their own collective, which is their East Indian supporters. That's a fact. That's indisputable. The other thing that they're autocrats, right? They're dictators. They don't believe in democracy, not even for their own supporters. They believe in high-handedness. They believe that people must do what they say. They believe in commanding and dominating society. They believe in controlling the press so that people can express themselves and their crimes and dictatorial tendencies cannot be exposed. Right now, I see them seeking to establish a one-party state, and that state is an apartheid, governed by an apartheid government. That's what they're doing in Guyana. And that's why I've been so outspoken. I don't want to see my home country, Guyana, become another South Africa. And whenever the PPP is in government, that's what they seek to do. They have no respect for Black people. They do not believe that Black people must have equal opportunity. They don't believe that Black people must have equal justice. That's a fact. We have to face it, we have to plan for it, and we have to confront them. If we have a so-called democratic society, then let it be a democratic society. And I'm appalled at some of the practices and conduct of the PPP, Sherrod, that is accepted in Guyana. And I assure you that under the APNUFC coalition government, that was truly democratic, that demonstrated that it had a commitment to an open society and democratic principles, those things would not have been acceptable. They would not have been acceptable.
Indeed.
So what has happened is that automatically, because of the intimidation and intimidatory tactics, right, and the dictatorial tendencies of the people are scared to speak out, right? This freedom that they got for the last 5 years under the APNU just vanished, like you said, overnight. And it's because people know that if they challenge the PP, they'll be murdered and killed. They know that they'll lose their jobs. They know that people come and burn down their homes. And we must not allow that to happen to society. We must not allow Guyana to go back to the society it was when Barry Jack Day was president.
Yeah, agreed. And Rickford, I know that you are facing your own prosecution, even from forces on the ground here. Tell us what's coming up on your program this evening, Conversations with Rickford.
Well, they can attempt to prosecute me. I'm not afraid of them, and I'll fight them back equally. And I have the influence to do it and the energy to do it. So they're not going to succeed. I'm having a conversation tonight on my program from 8:30 with Attorney at Law Darren Reid. We look at how they've been persecuting these members from GCOM and generally the racist practices of the PPP. Also, I noticed that the DPP attacked me today because I shared a news article on my program, on my Facebook page today, that highlighted how these police officers, Black female police officers, are treated, and the fact that they're using the criminal justice system to smear them and to falsely charge them, unjustly charge them with bogus charges. And I shared that article, and I condemned it. And today she issued a statement attacking me as if I wrote the article, saying that nobody from her office spoke with me. And while she's doing that, she's claiming that her office is independent and is not controlled by the PPP, and they operate based on facts and evidence. Well, we know that's a lie now because she had no evidence, absolutely no evidence that I said anything that she's accusing me of, but she's taking instructions from the hierarchy in the PPP to attack me, and so she's done that. So I've called for her to withdraw her statement. I'm waiting.
All right. So, folks, and we invite you guys to tune in to Rickford as he comes up later on this evening on social media. And you guys know where to find him. Look for Conversations with Rickford. Rickford, thanks for coming by and giving context to the George Floyd murder case verdict for us and these other issues. Thanks very much, Rickford.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good night to your listeners.
All right. Folks, there you have it. Our very own Rickford Burke, president of the Caribbean Guyana Institute of Democracy, the CGID, and host of Conversations with Rickford. He has Darren Wade coming up a little later on this program, and then we were discussing there the George Floyd murder case verdict, where Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all three counts. And I have with me this evening in the ring. This evening also Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, the former Minister of Public Security, the leader of the Alliance for Change and Member of Parliament. And I want to talk to him this evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, and a very good night to you, Sherrod.
Welcome in the ring. And we're going to be talking about some issues pertaining to law and order. But I want to start off with this big case that was decided today. It is referred to as the Parliamentary Secretary's case, but the legal name is the Christopher Jones versus the Attorney General, the Speaker, Sarah Brown, and Vikash Ramkissoon. Here is where you had two parliamentary secretaries, two members of parliament sitting, as the Chief Justice said, illegally in the National Assembly. Mr. Ramjattan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought that we were going to have this decision. It is based on a previous decision by Ian Chang, Chief Justice acting, and also it was affirmed the principle that once your name is on the list, you really can't be a permanent, what is secretary you call it? Parliamentary secretary.
Parliamentary secretary, yeah.
That's correct. And it is based on an Article 103.3, I think, of the Constitution that indicated that you can have parliamentary secretaries, but that they shall be appointed by the president from among persons who are qualified to be elected as members of the National Assembly and not elected members. Now, in the decision of Ian Chang had said that although you are not a sitting member, once your name is on the list, you are actually elected. And by that course that was set there as a precedent and brought finality and certainty to what an elected member of parliament meant, it could not have then meant a person who's qualified to be an elected member. Now, look, there is a little legal conundrum that could create some confusion here. But having settled that, when we had Mr. Felix and I think somebody else as the disputants there, how could you now all of a sudden want to rearrange the thing and say that these two persons, both Brown and Ramkissoon, is it Pandit Ramkissoon?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Vikash.
Vikash Ramkissoon, whose names are on the list, they cannot be there sitting as qualified to be elected members. And it is based on that, I found it very funny that you have Mr. Anil Nandalal now wanting to argue against the points that he had raised in that previous matter with Felix and the other person. So I'm glad the short shrift was made.
Felix and Scott.
I beg your pardon?
Felix and Scott.
Felix and Scott. Right. Short shrift was made of it. And I think the judge made it quite clear too that he was caught in the trap of his own submissions previously, and he couldn't really get out of it. He felt that, and this is a sentiment I notice with members of the PPP now. It is getting totally arrogant, and they feel that they could undo things that were there, that were hard fought for, and all of that. But it is indeed now proven once again that a third member of the PPP has now been an illegal parliamentarian.
And let's talk about that, because you have Onij Waldron, who I am certain, if the PPP didn't know, Onij knew that she was not, rightfully constituted to sit in the National Assembly. You had also these other two, Sarah Brown and Vikash Ramkissoon, who I'm certain that, you have a lot of bright folks in the PPP. Are they trying to hoodwink this nation?
Well, they have a support base that sometimes blindly believe whatever they see. And especially when you have figures like Anil Nandalal, very garrulous, and would say that this is it. I would argue that way and we're going to win it. And then he goes and tell them, and they kind of blindly acknowledge that, oh yes, once Anil argued the thing, that's it. And so
everything got clear.
Kind of fundamental underlying arrogance and beguiling of the Guyanese citizenry. It is but a cheating and a duplicity of the Guyanese, trying to put that on the Guyanese people. So it is a very negative approach, a negative attitude coming from the likes of those very senior lawmen from the PPP side. And of course, now you would have that the Chief Justice ruling will have to be abided by. I think they will try as best as possible to ask those two to still stay on, just like they did, and continue with them, just like with the Onij Waldron scenario. They're going to say that the matter now is in the hands of the Speaker, and we don't know what the Speaker will do.
Gymnastics.
Well, you will have all kinds of gymnastics. But the declaration has been made, and we're going to want to hear we're going to see now a number of arguments which will say that declarations are not coercive orders of court, so the court can't do anything. But declarations if you are a democratic government and a government that wants to uphold the rule of law, you will regard it as having that effect of a coercive order to the extent that you will abide by it. Most of these political matters are declarations being asked for. And when the law is ruled on and a declaration is granted, they immediately should come out of the parliament. You
Yeah,
know, and they
yeah,
should go ask for a stay of execution. They're illegal there. Just like when the ruling was made that when you got dual citizen, you can't be in parliament. All of our parliamentarians and everybody, remember, Joe Harmon and everybody then came out of parliament, Dominic Gaskin and so on. So we should have, now that the declaration has been granted by the court, these two people, parliamentary secretaries, coming out.
yeah. But this is the nature of the PPP. They talk a good talk. They check all the boxes for talk about constitutionality and obeying the constitution and being guardians of democracy and about good governance and transparency. But when it comes to walking the walk, now, they have made such egregious errors with three of their members of parliament. One would want to think if we continue to go down the line, we could dismiss perhaps all, 33 or 34 of these guys. And there have been so many egregious acts since they have, been installed into office on August 2nd. It boggles the mind. Equally, since they have come to office, for instance, we have seen a rise in crime. Some of the things that transpire now were unheard of, Mr. Ramjattan, over the last 5 years. With you as Minister of Public Security, we can talk about what happened on the high seas and how you were able with your team to bring down, piracy, bring down serious crime, bring down, so many things that were transpiring in this country. It seems as though since August 2nd, somebody letting the cocaine pass. Look from what has transpired at Palm Court to the Matthias robbery just over the weekend here. What is happening in our country, Mr. Ramjattan?
Well, it is, as I have said, a dismantling. Yeah, look at what's going on there. Matai failed robbery. It is but a dismantling of a lot of the administrative systems we put in place, the professionalization of the police force, the fact that you would have informants. I remember we had to take a lot of money. Clement Rowe, he used to ask me what we used to do with that money, but we had increased the monies to get informants being paid to do certain talk with the police as to where next these fellas are going to hit and so on, and getting information on the ground. A lot of people don't understand that. Sometimes these fellas just want some small pieces and they get it from the police and they give the police the information, or they call up the police and say, look, y'all be careful in the street there, the man house there, whatever. I understand all of that have been dismantled. And then, of course, the relations, I don't know what's their relationship now with the Surinamese authorities, but well, of course, with the Venezuelan authorities, it is not the best. But there you're going to see one or two other incidents of piracy. It may not be so much in Suriname side now, but it will be in the Venezuelan side. And that is, of course, because of the nature of the problems we have in Venezuela. But coming back locally too, there has been a tremendous upsurge in even domestic violence kind of crime. People beating up wives and stabbing up, or spouses killing and chopping up, and this bleeding out, as it were. I don't understand. Guyanese feel that you got to allow somebody to bleed out before the dispute is resolved. And we really got to do lots more counseling. I remember we had a program there, Sherrod, whereby about 1,400 young people were trained in and counseled. These were
citizen
young people.
Strengthening program.
That's correct. That's correct. And that has come to an end. And we had indicated that we would use our local monies after the program ended to continue it and even to expand it to at-risk, not only youths, but those that were above the age of youth, um, into the 30 age, 30, 40 years period, because a lot of them don't have jobs, they don't have technical skills, and we could have teach them certain things, and they probably could have learned something, a special skill. And also in the process of learning the skill, you're also counseling them how to ensure that they do not get that angry as to reach that red line and then cross it. A lot of work was done by a number of the institutions here in Guyana and the University of Guyana too. I doubt whether those things are being continued, and it is a travesty really, because we are putting out lots more people there to do damage to our Guyanese citizens, businessmen especially, and you know, this kind of thing is not going to go down well, as I have always said. And of course, as the literature on it goes, that where there's severe crime and criminality, investors not going to want to come. The advisory already out of America is putting us in a very serious state. And
Yeah, for the COVID at least.
well, at least for the COVID. But in addition to the COVID, the crime rates, once they start increasing, they might even go to another grade. I think we are level 4 now. We might go to level 5 and that kind of thing. Now, this is serious. What it also does is also make the Guyanese here more stressful. COVID is already stressful in a very big way. But now when you're going out to the market or you're going somewhere to get your items to come back home, because a lot of people now are generally at home and so on, or at least more than when before we had the COVID, they're now frightened, they're fearful, and that is not good enough at all. And we had brought this thing down. Crime rates had literally come down. I feel that all of these, and look, the man got even the video camera and all of that there, and they don't care now.
Brazen. Brazen.
Brass, yes, brass face. And this kind of thing will continue, because I know for a matter of fact, although they're talking nonsense as they did in the budget, that how the country will grow and how the country will, the oil monies do not necessarily mean growth in the country by virtue of people feeling satisfied and economically benefiting. They are going to have a lot of people who not going to in any way get that set of oil monies. And the majority of the Guyanese are like that already. We haven't really gotten into the oil monies. It is there. And they don't want to, with the opposition, to go and put their hands on that. We had a special regime under the Natural Resource Fund Act. They don't want to go and touch that. They said they want to repeal the act or amend it before they go and touch the oil monies. Now, with the COVID and the bad economic times, and not wanting to collectively go into the oil monies, the petroleum monies there under the Natural Resource Fund Act, we are going to have hardships out there. People are going to punish as they are right now. And in that punishment, they will be compelled, some of them, who will feel that I just can't allow my family members to suffer starvation or whatever it is. They're going to jump now onto businessmen and do the madness because of greed and so on. Not because, of course, you're suffering, you're going to want to go and steal. It should not be. But that is the reality in every society. You get it in India, you get it in China, you get it in America, everywhere. And to avoid that, we have to do better economically, and that is not what is being done. We also have to send a lot more policemen all over the place. Yeah. I had sent a lot of patrols in and around some of the housing scheme areas, Diamond and a number of other places and so on. And you arrange. Well, I understand some of the vehicles now are broken down because, again, you got them police buys this drive them things, this like the drive rocket all over the place.
Yeah. And all of the restraints seem to have been removed.
Yeah, and that's correct.
And as you're talking,
that will make now the patrols in all these various areas not be, even the police community groups. We went yesterday to Maikoni.
Yeah.
Remember? We went to Maikoni and we spoke at a Madres place there. We were telling people how, we had our community policing groups, and we had given them almost a brand new vehicle in that area. We
Correct.
understood the
And a
vehicle was
minibus.
great. Yeah.
Yep. As you mentioned, the police force, it was Roger Khan, and I don't even need to introduce who is Roger Khan. The very name tells us who the individual is, who said quite recently, when the state security apparatus breaks down, the heart of men is going to bleed. That being said, the police force seemed to be in its own pocketry. The police force, on March 26th, three commissioners of police, as a matter of fact, three police officers, including an assistant commissioner of police, they were charged for fraud amounting to about $19 million. Right? This was Assistant Commissioner of Police Kevin Adonis, Sergeants Michael Corbin, Jermaine Fraser, and Corporal Raul Haynes. Again, they were charged. It is alleged that they would have been involved in activity where they stole the Guyana police property totaling some $19 million. April 17, one article says another two police officers have been charged by the Special Organized Crime Unit for alleged misconduct in relation to falsification of payments for meals supplied to the Guyana Police Force. These were Superintendent of Police Lorraine Saul and other ranks. One Kurt Smith and someone else. What is happening? Again, these things were unheard of over the last 5 years. They seem bizarre. They seem out of the twilight zone. What is happening in this country and in the Guyana Police Force?
Well, look, we had our rogue elements even in my administration in public security, and I rather suspect that we're going to have. Even Jesus Christ had his Judas.
But like everybody come out now.
Well, the investigation obviously were pending for a while, and then when the reports were made, or at least when the auditors or the internal auditors found it, then they had it coming out. And I'm glad that at least, well, I don't want to deny them the presumption of innocence, but I'm glad that these matters are being investigated, and because you want your police force to be made up of professional, honest men of integrity, people who are not going to be bullies in and around their communities, but big brothers in their communities. And what is happening now is obviously giving me the impression that there have been loopholes created where people feel tempted and they wanted to do a thing or two, whether it is under this administration or even previously in my administration. They must learn to be professional. Most of these senior officers, they have been given training on how to be with integrity and how to conduct their business and conduct themselves and conduct their administration matters and so on. And it is surprising that still, and they have gotten good salaries now, these officers, and to the extent of at least, like senior public servants and so on, and they get a duty-free concession and things like that.
Yep. Access
Why
to
they
higher
do it? It is
education.
obviously greed. There's dissatisfaction, and they also are dishonest to the extent of wanting to take a chance, knowing very well that they might very well get away with it. But I am glad that the commissioner and his team has managed to catch them up and ensure that what they have done, they will have to see justice done to the people of Guyana in relation to the monies, and also that justice be done to them if indeed there's substantial evidence for them to be convicted.
Mr. Ramjattan, you spoke there about the presumption of innocence, which is important, the presumption of innocence. And there's a school of thought that suggests that some of what we see transpiring in the Guyana police force is political in nature. People trying to get rid of some people so that they can move into those slots, their own people, and to dominate the Guyana police force.
Yeah, well, I have noticed that from reports, even you have been mentioning it. I have made some queries about these things and so on. We went, myself, I think you were also there, Harmon, met the commissioner of police. A big team went in to talk about all these matters. And I am very concerned about it. Um, Look, this thing must not be unilinear. You got to understand that all across the board, there must be this presumption applied to. And we must not discriminate and want to go knock some people off and don't bother with their presumption of innocence, charge them wrongfully, and then hit out at them, and then interdict and whatever else, and then replace their positions with others who you like. That is not good governance. That is not democratic governance. And so, wherever that is happening, it should be condemned, and condemned by the entirety of society. We know some people now have lost their voices. They don't want to say even
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah, they just lost their voice.
All of the guardians gone quiet. They're
Yes,
not guarding.
yes. All of the guardians who are supposed to be there to ensure are the good custodians for our constitutionalism, our professionalism within these major departments like the police force and so on. They gone quiet. But look, at some point in time, because I believe in reason, reason ultimately win. And at some point in time, they themselves will see what this administration is doing, and also what it is not doing, to the extent then that they will be forced to open their mouths, condemn what they're not doing, and condemn what they're doing, to that extent of trying to remedy the situation. We need more voices to come out, voices to speak out. And that is important in this country now.
Great. Mr. Ramsdale, you spoke there about having rogue elements in the Guyana police force. And one would want to think that in any organization, there are elements that go off on their own tangents, rogue elements. But how do we explain, for instance, the police force chaplain makes a prayer, independent of thought, and then the man is dismissed because somebody didn't like how he prayed? Is this a rogue element?
Well, it tends towards that. Remember, when I went in there, I tell you what, I think it was Silal Prasad that told me that this is a very, this chaplain is a character, and he is very forceful and brutally frank. So he's going to tell you what he feels about his police force. And my first meeting with him, and I tell the man, here, Pastor, you just like me. That is a kind of a Ramjattan attitude. I am very brutally frank, and I'll cuss people up and tell them haul your tail and so on, that kind of thing. So I appreciated that kind of thing. And I said, Pastor, because of the fact that he's a member that is very closely knit with the police force, he knows where the things are going wrong. He knows a lot about them. And so when you're going to have at the very first officer's course, the man making a prayer, and he, in a sense, came out as he did, you give appreciation, because if you want to live the democratic life, and the very liberal democratic life, you have to accommodate the offensive and the insulting and even sometimes the disgusting.
That's what makes America great.
That is what makes America great. And that we have to now appreciate that here is a pastor, here is a man of the cloth, talking about what the police force, he sees in some of them there. Not all, obviously it is not all, but he was making some statements which he wants to encourage them to come out of. And when a man has a style like that and he's doing it that way, you don't go next day and say, well, you can get knocked off as chaplain. Yeah. That was stupid, very stupid. And I'm very glad that the president.
It sounds like he is a Ramjattan of the cloth. He say things as they are.
I had some very good times with him for that 5-year period, and I appreciated him. He also told me what I must look for, and people like them, when they're in the thick of things at the ground there, a good minister will want them all the more, and you'll give them calls and ask them what's going on, how things are the police there, what's good, and things like that, especially in the welfare section, because as chaplain, he did a wonderful job in that section too. So I am glad that the president, Irfan Ali, called him in and called out the people who wanted to throw him out and tell them, leave the man, the prayers were good enough. And so it's important that we continue to have people like that. So that kind of attitude is the wrong attitude. Anybody that is critical of a police force must be allowed to be critical, because there can be some gems there in that set of critique, which, if now unearthed from the police force, can strengthen it and so on.
Well, the man talked about praying about corruption, and now here are all these fraud charges.
Yeah, well, you see, he has been vindicated. He knows what he's about, and we might see a lot more. And so it's important that we do have chaplains of that quality who can speak out and give the information out and so on. And of course, the greedy cops, the rogue elements, will need God at their side. Remember when Jesus was being
Crucified.
he had a thief next to him.
Oh yes. Yeah. So we say to Pastor Patrick Bulichan, keep on praying. Mr. Ramjattan, you spoke about sometimes people have to be called out, and we saw recently a very, very staunch PPP supporter calling out the administration with the use of sirens. It seems like every minister now has a siren with flashing lights, and junior ministers and their family got flashing lights. I saw even the American ambassador has flashing lights and sirens now. What is this happening on the ground?
Again,
I know that it was only the commissioner of police. I think the minister of public security, home affairs got sirens and flashing lights. The prime minister and the president. I think those are the only categories of persons.
Those were the four
dignitaries. Now it's everybody with sirens and flashing lights. It's like Christmas in Georgetown.
Yeah, it is. It is. It has gone bad, Sherrod. It has really gone bad. All their friends and family members, literally, who they feel should get one sometime. I understand that they allow. And some of these other ministers and so on, who feel that the traffic is too congested out there, and they got to go flipping around and flitting around all over the place and pass cars and create even more confusion. And so, whereas you just had about 5 or 6 persons, as I said, in the cabinet, ministerial,
senior people.
Yes, very senior people. Now you got everybody. And I understand there are some other people who got. I have seen I was driving to Barbies, and this was not a public servant's car, I thought it was initially a member from the GRA, but it was not, as it turned out to be. And someone, that it was right, one of the close family of some of the senior minister.
Oh wow!
Look at this thing. What are they doing here? So, boss, it has gone pretty bad. It is not very nice, and these things ought to be administratively, and there are certain standing orders governing these things. But when you want to now reward back all those who had done to you the good things that you wanted to be done unto yourselves, that kind of reward would mean now a dismantling of all the administrative arrangements and the executive arrangements that were in place. And so you're going to get it scatterbrained all over the place. And then there's a difficulty, because when you give somebody family, another man will come and say about how he could get and I can't get. And then you're going to crack up and you're going to say, well, you got a point there. Why, if he get you most senior, you should get, and so on. The whole thing then, as it is called, and a slippery slope. It becomes an unruly horse, as the Anil Nandalal would say. And then everybody then will make the argument that he or she should get.
And that is the conundrum that we find ourselves in, and that is part of the breakdown of law and order, because if as the law dictates, it's only very, very senior, a handful of functionaries are entitled to sirens and flashing lights, and now everybody has them, then nobody's senior in this administration here, and that is the tragedy. We have coming up in May, on the 14th of May, I think. Sorry, the 14th of yeah, the 14th of May, the appeal for elections petition 99, and we have the decision in 88 coming up on the 26th of April. What are your thoughts as we head towards those dates?
Well, the one on the 26th, I feel that there is some very cogent, compelling arguments made by Senior Counsel John Jeremy, that indeed this matter should be ruled in favor of the petitioners. And so I am very confident that that is what is going to happen. You know, when you base the arguments as against what arguments came from the other side, this thing about you can't just agree to come out of the law is a very powerful argument. It has a precedent in Esther Pereira matter. It has a precedent also in a fact situation that the Alliance for Change also suffered from. I always like to give that example.
Yeah.
2006, and I want to make it clear again here, because politics is a lot of repetition. In 2006, we had won a 6th seat, the Alliance for Change. We were only declared to have gotten 5 seats. But when we had checked back the numbers given in the Region 10, we had won about 800 more votes, but because of our arithmetical computation error done by whosoever was the returning officer, I can't remember, we went then and tried to get it matter remedied before you could then sit in Parliament. We wanted Steve Surajbali and Gokul Budu, who was CEO, telling them that, look, man, we got the facts and the figures here, and the thing is wrong. Mathematically, it come up to, let me say, 2,000 and not 1,200. It is 2,000. They make a mistake. No. You got to go by elections petition. Law.
I know declaration was made. As
of the Region 10 has already made his declaration. That's and you dead.
Okay.
So what the hell is this? And all the mother cusses and so on that you could give the two of them. But you're robbing me.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here is a case where they then said that the regime of law is that you must go by an elections petition because the man has declared it. And then I went up and I do even more studies of the elections petition. And I said, yes, well, fine, we can go and do the elections petition. We filed an elections petition, but it blasted to take 5 years before Mr. Ian Chang started doing it. And by that time, we had another elections, or thereabouts. He gave a ruling on it, saying that we served or something to do with service and all of that. But there it is. You have that as a precedent that you must abide by the legal regime that is in existence in the Constitution and in the statutes. And that this is how it must be done. And so even if you try to agree out of it, it might be unconstitutional, as Jeremy is arguing. I love the argument, I must tell you, of course. And so it has tremendous teeth about it. It's compelling, it's cogent, and I rather suspect that Madam will be forced to. But let's see how she rules. And if not in our favor, then we'll have to appeal just like we did in relation to 99.
Yeah.
But compelling
and just like the PPP are doing now in relation to these parliamentary secretaries' case, because they like to give the impression it's only we appeal issues.
Oh, yeah.
We appeal cases.
You see, Anil Nalalal, he lost before Roxanne George, Chief Justice, and now he goes to the appeal court.
Yeah.
But he used to tell his Shaila, them people are as Falahi, that how he know that that they're wrong and this and that, and I don't know what they're wasting time at the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
What are you wasting time for now?
Yeah. All are created equal, but some more equal than others.
Duplicity, man. Yeah. That is the fella. Anil down here, Anil an ordinary, And let me
he's a tree. He can be ordinary.
I wonder what you're going to go and tell them now. You're going to make a fine distinction or some such idiocy, And then he's going to tell them, and let me tell you something, all of them going to believe. They're going to say, yes, this by proper no law. Oh,
Yeah. Bright bud.
heaven
Then
sent.
100 watt bulb. Mr. Ramjattan, you've always been very concerned about COVID as we close. I know you've been vaccinated. Like me, you took the AstraZeneca. I took a better one, the Sputnik. But
I am
COVID
glad that I persuaded you there yesterday.
and I am happy you did also. And my wife says thank you. You made me lose my trail of thought.
You're
Yes,
talking about COVID.
COVID is spreading here, rapidly. What are your thoughts to the Guyanese people? Because we still see a lot of people who are very, very cavalier about the deadliness of COVID-19.
Look, it's a combination of, I feel, not the proper enforcement by the administration. And I have tremendous regard for my good friend, Frank Anthony, Dr. Frank Anthony. But I think that, he is being constrained by a lot of other interests, especially the business interest that played a large role inside of that last elections. And of course, Jagdeo is the control freak. He will be telling them, don't enforce these curfews, extend the curfews to late hours, 10 o'clock in the night, and all kinds of things. That is one of the things that always help, curfews. I remember the domestic violence that came down under my 5-year. I brought the curfew, that 2 o'clock curfew. Even a number of my AFC members used to be vexed with me, but it helped. It helped plenty. That will help. But in addition to government's dealings with it and cutting down all these massive crowds and so on, and ensuring that people wear their mask wheresoever they go, and a whole host of other things, I still feel that it has to be done 50% of the way by the individuals themselves.
Yeah, true.
If you find yourself in big crowds, or if you're not going to social distance, why not wearing your mask? Individual irresponsibility is a big, big thing here in Guyana. And that is one of the things here. But I still believe that lots more should be done at a governmental level. And we have to start, because the deaths are happening too many now, man. We probably don't have the equipment, but we will have to get the equipment if you've got to go to the oil monies and so on. Because what is important? Lives or parking up the oil money there? And you know why the PPP don't want to go into the oil monies? It is because under the regime of laws that we constructed in the Natural Resource Fund Act, it requires both the opposition and the government to collectively make sure, along with some professional advisors, to ensure that we can now draw down that money. But if PPP don't want to go there, they will borrow 107 billion this year rather than go to the oil monies, because when they borrow, only them can spend it. Whereas the law in the Natural Resource Fund Act is that the opposition, parliament, the assembly, along with a body called the public accountability body. I had it somewhere here, but an investment committee, and a committee that will deal with how we will make withdrawals and all of that. So there's a little bureaucracy about the thing, but it is important because it will involve a collective effort as to how we spend it. PPP don't want that. They want to repeal the thing or amend the thing.
Yeah.
So we are going to deny ourselves a lot of that could save lives, and that is atrocious.
Thank you, Mr. Ramjattan, for this time you've spent with us this evening, talking about law and order locally and the deterioration, basically, that we have been seeing, and walking us through some of those important cases. This important one that was the judgment handed down today, that is the parliamentary secretary's case, and the 2 elections petitions that are still before us. Thank you, sir. Member of Parliament, Khemraj Ramjattan, leader of the Alliance for Change. Thank you, sir, and former Minister of Public Security as well. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Okay, take care and good night.
Folks, we continue to ask you to social distance, wear your mask, sanitize. If you're in groups, shouldn't be groups larger than 10, and even in those groups, you should be socially distant. Tomorrow, folks, tomorrow, we're in the diaspora, and I'm talking with a senator out of the Jamaican National Assembly, Jamaica's parliament. I'm talking tomorrow evening with Senator Donna Scott Motley, right here in the ring tomorrow. Folks, in Jamaica recently, there was a vicious beating of a woman by a parliamentarian. A vicious, vicious beating of a woman by a parliamentarian. And tomorrow evening, Senator Donna Scott Motley will be with us talking about that and other issues. So I invite you guys to come in the ring tomorrow, to come ringside, and to join us very, very early. We're going to have Senator Donna Scott Motley with us. Folks, a very good evening. Thanks for joining in the ring. And do have a good night and stay safe, folks. And I hope when I get to the other end, you all share the live stream. Stay safe.